Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you guys yet again for tuning in. Today, we should have another great show. Unfortunately, it is the bittersweet ending of the hockey season, as we will be recapping the Panthers' Game 7 win. We will not have that many more hockey segments coming up in the next couple of weeks, but we are transitioning into the football season. So after we recap the Panthers Game 7 win and also look at the 2024-25 way too early Stanley Cup champion betting odds, we are going to delve even more deeply into my player profile series. We're going to be looking at even more exciting, dynamic quarterbacks that you should roster for your fantasy team, including one of the most consistent fantasy quarterbacks of all time, and also one of the most controversial fantasy quarterbacks of all time. So it should be a very, very exhilarating show. Let's just get right into it. But before we do just that, I do want to remind you to like, follow, and subscribe to the show. It is a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and the network. Another way you can support all of us is by leaving a tip or donation at the link, gsmc.cloud right there. That is also a huge support, another way to support the network and me and my fellow podcasters. So if you do ever feel so inclined, please consider it. It's appreciated. Also, question or about any of our segments at the beginning of next episode. Without further ado, let's jump into a very, very good job. And we'll start off with the events last night. Your Panthers are the 2024 NHL champions, winning 2-1 last night, the Edmonton Oilers. A game that really saw the Panthers in many different ways, in many different varieties, get back what they did best, limiting the high scoring chance that Edmonton produced, and just overall playing the sound game. So, without further ado, you're still playing daily fantasy hockey and you care to know who are the stars of that game last night. Here they are for you. Carter Verhaeghe. I said that he had to step up, and he stepped up in spades, scored the first goal. This period kind of set the tone for how the game was going to go. 1 goal, 1 assist last night, 2 plus minus for 9.5 fantasy points for him. And another player who I've been singing his praises all postseason long, Sam Reinhart, with a goal. The game-winning goal, it turns out, 1 plus minus and 6.5 fantasy points. And last but not least, a guy who I said needed to have a stellar game in net for the Florida Panthers to have any chance of winning this game, and he lived up to that expectation. Sergei Bobrovsky, .958 save percentage last night for 6.6 fantasy points. So overall, the Florida Panthers stars and key role players stepped up when they needed him. Carter Verhaeghe, more than anyone, a guy who has been there, done that, won the Stanley Cup, producing for the Florida Panthers now, and ultimately a well-deserved Florida Panthers win. On the Edmonton Oilers side of things, I guess the only player worth mentioning is the goal scorer, with Matthias Janmark getting that breakaway goal only like 2 minutes after Carter Verhaeghe opened the scoring. With that 1 goal, he ends up with only 4.5 fantasy points on 1 plus minus. So overall, as you can see, the Edmonton Oilers did not necessarily live up to their ferocious comeback. In terms of what happened in this game, I can't really say what certain attributes of the game made Florida come out victorious. I'm really struggling to find the ways to describe how Florida won this game, because it was a very going through the motions like game, especially for the Edmonton Oilers. I'm not saying the Edmonton Oilers didn't play well. There were certain periods and moments where Edmonton seemed to be controlling the game. They seemed to be getting back to what they did best, especially on the power play. But ultimately, it did seem a little bit caricaturish. It did seem to be like, okay, we're just going to go through what we have done to get to this point, and hopefully Florida is not going to be as energized as they not been in these past 3 games, and that was not the case. Florida really keyed in defensively, and also it ended up coming down to the bounces of the puck. If you see Florida's goals, one is very well incredibly worked. It's what their forte is for getting these kind of goals. You go behind the net, you have someone behind the net, center the puck back into the offensive zone, get a pass on goal or a shot on goal, and hopefully someone is there to tap it in. That's what happened. You saw the guy behind the net pass it out to Rodriguez. Rodriguez got on a net, and Verhaeghe was there to tap it in. And then the second goal was just a weird kind of defensive breakdown for Edmonton, where you have a really, really good chance at the other end of the ice, and it's hovering around Bobrovsky's kind of crease there, and then the Panthers are able to clear it. Sam Reinhart's skating free, and he just gets a shot off. You can say that perhaps Skinner should have saved that shot, but it is what it is, and Sam Reinhart ends up getting that game-winning goal in the end. On the Edmonton side of things, I really think that they just didn't get lucky, right? The way they got back into this game not only was because of their power play and penalty kill, their 2 huge facets of success in the playoffs. It was because they were getting one-on-one opportunities with Bobrovsky that not a lot of teams get. And as we saw last night on the breakaway goal of Matthias Janmark, the Oilers did a fantastic job of getting those pucks up the middle of the neutral zone and into their offensive zone very well for those breakaway kind of opportunities. Last night, the Florida Panthers did so well clogging all those areas, shutting down ways that Edmonton could get passes through to their key players, the little outlet passes that they usually have. They did that very well. If you saw the Edmonton power plays last night, every single player touched the puck on the power play. Because Florida was so keyed into shutting off the passes into the net, the passes back to Bouchard, the way Bouchard got the puck on net, they were just able to limit how Edmonton could score goals, especially limiting their amount of turnovers high up their end of the zone and being very aggressive in getting to their forecheck early and often. And so that's the reason why Florida won the Stanley Cup, I think. They just proved that when the going gets rough, they get going, and they got off to a fantastic start. So, in terms of the Conn Smythe Trophy, I do think that Connor McDavid well deserved, and I actually do not think this Game 7 loss taints his legacy. I think that ultimately, when we look through the lens to after Connor McDavid's career, when he's retired, he's hung up his boots, and he's going to the Hall of Fame, I don't think, win or lose any Stanley Cup, whether he gets back there in the future, Connor McDavid, when it's all said and done, is going to be revered by so many in the league just for what he represents. His skill set is one of the best in the league, one of the best we've ever seen, and I don't think it's going to be any different. And I truly believe that even though it sucks that he could not win it with the Oilers, I think this Conn Smythe Trophy for such a fantastic postseason to even get to this point really elevates his status as one of the best players in the league and in the history of the league, rather than diminish it. I don't think that, him having kind of a subpar Game 7 and Game 6 will even taint his legacy either way. A lot of players, when they lose the Stanley Cup, but still have phenomenal postseasons, are still revered. It happened with Reggie Leach because he had a phenomenal conference semifinals to get to that point. I think that Connor McDavid doesn't necessarily need a cup to win, but he definitely needs a certain amount of longevity in playoff runs that others might not need, because the Edmonton Oilers championship window, like it or not, no matter how open it seems, is going to rapidly close. Not only are the Avs the Golden Knights, the Stars. We'll talk about them later if we get to the Stanley Cup odds for next season segment of the show. And there are younger teams like the Canucks that they played and took them a little while to break down. And other teams out in the West, maybe even the Kraken, get back to what they did in their first year, getting to the playoffs as the first year of their expansion team. So I feel like the defining moment of the McDavid-Draisaitl era was not last night. It's going to be next season, because of the fact that they're going to have to wipe this Game 7 from their memories. Forget the fact that they got to that comeback. Look themselves in the mirror, look inwards, and figure out how to get back at it again, because no one's going to lay to rest for them. No one is going to play dead for them. This is the Western Conference of the NHL, one of the toughest conferences in all of sports to get through right now. The fact that Edmonton did break through is very encouraging, but there are very few opportunities for them to break through again, especially as more and more young teams get better. Who knows? The playoff landscape is going to be very, very volatile and very, very intriguing to see next season. So Edmonton better hope that they can sustain this level till next season, because there are many teams coming in this league that Edmonton should be scared of. But congratulations yet again to the Florida Panthers. I do believe they were the better team, even though for 3 games they definitely did not look like it. But for Game 7, they got back to what they did best. And a team lifted the trophy last night. A team forgot what happened before and won Game 7. And a team definitely deserves their first franchise Stanley Cup. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers on such a fantastic NHL season. And with that, that will just about end this segment. And unfortunately, all of these postseason segments for hockey. We bid adieu to the hockey season. Coming up next, we are going to be doing our first player profile of this edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast with one of the most consistent fantasy QBs. And if you want to find out who it is, come back right after the break. It should be a can't-miss segment.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign.